which is why half of all businesses never see their fifth birthday.
Yeah, that's an amazing. I think it's even worse in the service side of things, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Probably.
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
Welcome, everybody, to the Jerry Brazy podcast. Today we have Adam Lean. Adam is a former accountant turned small business owner. He helps small businesses and their owners make their business profitable by untangling the financials and showing them exactly which levers to pull to maximize profit. And from profit, you get freedom, obviously. Our goal is simple, he said, to help our clients go from feeling overwhelmed, stressed about cash, wondering where all the money go, to feeling confident, knowing that they're running their businesses like a CEO with the numbers driving the decision making. Adam, how are you? How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you on. This goes right along with kind of the overarching theme of our podcast here, which is business based. And myself, I've owned probably a dozen businesses or more, bought and sold over the years. Some were smaller, some were bigger. And so for me, this is a great subject. But before we get started on that, tell us a little bit about yourself so we have some background on you.
Yeah, so I graduated from college in 2005 and became an accountant because I was an accounting major and thought it was the natural thing to do, and became an accountant and hated it.
Yeah.
I spent 4 years as an accountant. I loved where I worked. I just didn't really like the job of being an accountant. So I started my own business at nights and on the weekends. And I started in 2006, an e-commerce store. And that business actually grew. It grew sort of fast. And this was, granted, this was before all the big box stores woke up to the fact that the internet was here to stay. And
you were out in front of it a bit. You were out in front of it a little bit, though.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
But sales were growing. And so I was able to leave my day job and focus on my business. Sales kept growing, but then around 2009, things started to sort of hit a wall in a sense. Sales were still growing, but my profit margin and cash flow was getting tighter and tighter every single month. And because I had an accounting background, I knew what the problems were. I knew why I was where my profit leaks, if you will, were going, and why I wasn't getting enough cash flow. And so I was able to sort of understand that and take steps to fix the business. But around the same time, I started working with friends who own businesses as well. They were experiencing the exact same problems, but they didn't have the benefit of having an accounting background. They had no clue what was going on. And their solution was to just work harder and just get more sales and grind more. You know what I mean? And so I started working with them and showing them that, this is your problem, not necessarily this, and we started working on the most important things that impacted sales. And, fast forward several years, I started the CFO project, where we give business owners a quote unquote CFO, somebody that analyzes the financials of the business and tells the business owner, look, here's the 1, 2, or 3 things that you need to do this month to be on track to make a profit, which is what a CFO or chief financial officer does for big businesses. Small businesses don't have that kind of resource. And I wanted to give small business owners that help.
And to give some context to what Adam is saying, from a business perspective, over the years, small businesses can't afford really to have a CFO in many cases. And I have been using an outsourced CFO. Oh man, I have 15 years, 16 years.
Yeah.
So a long time, because as a small business, you don't necessarily need that full time, but you do need somebody to look at your books and make sure they're being interpreted correctly. So that's kind of why somebody on the business side, particularly a small business side, would hire somebody like you. And that's exactly what I've done over the last 15 years or so.
And I'm sure a listener's thinking, well, I have a bookkeeper or I have an accountant. Yep. Isn't that their job? Well, yes and no. The thing is, accountants and bookkeepers are getting paid to record what happened. That's it. they're there for a compliance reason, especially your accountant. They want to make sure your books are correct for tax purposes. Uh, they're not getting paid to be forward looking and help you figure out how to strategize, or if you should spend this money, or if you should hire this person or invest in this inventory. They're not there for that. You need somebody on your team that's financially minded that can help give you direction and help you improve the future. I mean, when your accountant or bookkeeper gives you your profit and loss statement last month, that's what happened last month. You need somebody to help you figure out how to impact your profit and loss next month and next year.
And that's the hardest thing in business from my perspective, is knowing what those, I mean, we all know what no, let me back up. We don't all know what a balance sheet is. We don't know what a profit and loss is. We all have a vague understanding when we start of what a business is. I go back to when I started. I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was, right? I have a very humble background, and I started my own business when I was 28, but I did it because I got sent a pro forma from a company that wanted to invest. And I don't know what in the hell I was looking at. I didn't understand the numbers. I didn't know what a balance sheet was or a profit and loss statement. And so I knew how to run operations. I knew how to sell, right? And those are the kind of the things that business owners and entrepreneurs know how to do. The hard part and the most important part is the numbers. And as I tell Billy, and we talk about on my podcast here all the time, the most important 3 steps to running your business is know your numbers, and know your numbers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's 1, 2, and 3. It. And so that goes right along with what you're talking, because I've suffered from that. And I had my companies within 4 years, I was doing 14 million in my first 4 years.
Wow.
And at 14 million, I made no money. And so I made the decision to cut it back to 8 million with my outside CFO coming in. You're looking at the work. And as an example, one of the things that they found working for me was that 90% of my claims came from one customer, Staples.
Oh, wow.
And so I had one customer in the transportation company that had 90% of its work comp. That was pointed out to me by my my contracted CFO, and we went and dropped them. And we dropped about $5 million worth of business in 30 days and got the company profitable again, doing half as much revenue almost. And so, you'd rather have half the revenue and do twice the work, or make twice the money. But business owners, I think, at least this has been my case, and this has been my experience working with other entrepreneurs, that top line is the one that you concentrate on. How big is your business? And so somebody like you will come in and show us what the bottom line is. And sometimes that can be a tough educational process, I'm assuming.
Yeah. My favorite quote is by Robert Kiyosaki. He wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
It's not how much you make that matters. It's how much you keep.
Yes.
Sales is the making part. Profit is the keeping part. It doesn't matter if you made $1 million this month if you're not keeping any of it.
Right.
Profit is more important than sales. And cash trumps everything. You've got to turn that profit into cash flow.
Yeah, that's the other part of being a business owner that I didn't understand as I grew to my first set of investors. As I talked about, I had them for a year. We did $3 million that first year, and they didn't think we would do that. And my job was to bring in the revenue and run the company, and their job was to provide the financing. And they didn't have enough money, and I didn't understand when I started out that growing that top line isn't enough, and really moving the top line to the bottom line isn't enough. If your customers are paying you on 60-day terms, you don't have enough money to pay your bills because there's no cash flow in the business. So somebody like you, I'll keep coming back to this because any of our business owners or prospective entrepreneurs, guys like you serve a very important function, because without having to have the full cost of a CFO, you get all of the benefits of a CFO.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've structured this business in such a way that we charge a flat fee per month because we've created this process. We call it the 4-step process that our CFOs go through with our clients. That way it's very affordable for the small business owners out there. And, we all but guarantee that our fee will be covered in additional profit by working with us going through this 4-step process.
Right. So they can't afford not to do it almost.
Right. I mean, you need help.
Yeah.
Everybody needs help.
Everybody needs help.
Amazon.com has a CFO because they need help. I mean, everybody needs help.
Yeah. How was it? Let's talk about starting a business and kind of moving out of the accounting side and getting out there on your own. What was that process like for you? Because when somebody says they're an accountant, we don't immediately think of a mountain climber. Right. You kind
Which is probably why I shouldn't have been an accountant in the first place.
Yeah, because I'm guessing that you're closer to a mountain climber than you are an accountant, and because that takes a special mindset to be able to be an accountant. So, again, being able to be an accountant and study the way you need to, and kind of look at numbers the way that you need to, that doesn't typically lend itself either to moving out on your own, taking some risks, and starting a business. Tell us about that. How was that process?
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, I was excited because I was very naive when it comes to business ownership. I thought, well, I could do what these guys are doing. And so I opened up some accounts with some distributors and manufacturers, and I basically built a website because this was before Shopify and BigCommerce and all those guys existed, and I started hosting it myself, and I was just excited because I was bored to tears at my day job, so I wanted to get my hands, into my own project. So I was excited about it. I made several mistakes. Actually, my business went through four iterations before it actually took off.
Can you tell us what were some of the bigger mistakes?
So not understanding my customer. Not understanding the technology with e-commerce and getting, once I had a visitor on the website, getting them to actually buy. But the technology is so much better now to do that. The third thing was actually getting visitors to the site, so marketing, lead generation. I mean, all of this is sort of a foreign concept to me. And I would go and do a lot of research and talk to other people and read and see what, I joined, I lived in Atlanta, and I joined back in 2006, like a meetup group called the Atlanta Web Entrepreneurs or something like that. It was like 60 of us that would meet at Georgia Tech. And I met somebody that did this thing called Google Ads. And we started talking one night, and he said, "Hey, you need to do this." And so he taught me how to do my first ad. I put my first ad the next day. That was amazing. I mean, I just took it. I mean, there's so much resources available now that just weren't back then, especially for online, but for especially somebody that really didn't own a business before. I mean, I was an accountant. And I, newly out of school. But it was exciting because I really didn't know what I didn't know.
and I think if we all, the lesson there is that naivete that we have. And I know a lot of business owners, and you're in business with business owners also, so you probably run into this. But if we all if somebody told me when I was 28 years old what the next 20 years of my life was going to, let's say what the next 10 or 15 years of my life was going to look like. No, I don't know. I'd like to say sitting here that I would have done it anyway, but I'm 50 years old now. I was 28 years old then. If I had any sense of how business really worked and how difficult it is, and the things that you don't know is what makes it so difficult. And the more you know, the easier something very difficult gets. That is to say, it continues to be difficult, but it just, the more you understand, the easier it gets. I don't know that that story combined with many other stories that I have of other business owners, because I belong to a business owner group also and have for 20 years. People shouldn't feel bad about being naive going into business and what they don't know. In fact, I think that many people that go into business don't ask enough questions. They're not inquisitive enough, or they don't want to sound like they don't know what they're talking about. I don't suffer from that. I'll ask the dumbest question in the world because I don't care. what somebody thinks. And I'll tell I'll hand somebody a crayon and say, hey, this accounting method you're explaining to me, this GAP program, here's a crayon and a clean piece of paper. Talk to me like I'm 5 years old because I don't understand what you're telling me.
Totally.
And I think that that's very important, particularly for really in anything, but aspiring business owners and entrepreneurs should not worry about what that they don't know. They should worry about where they're getting their information and how do they find it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that meetup group, just to continue on that thought, I'm glad that you said that. I talk often on my podcast about my CEO group that I belong to, and the neat thing about it is I joined when I was 29 years old, and so when I was 29, all of these business owners that counseled me, and kind of like you said, you meet people that give you answers to questions that you don't know, but they were all 48 and 50. And this is a little, not really anything to do with accounting here, but and kind of the neat thing now is 20 years later, I remember looking at them when I was 29 and going, these are the wise old sages that have been in business for 25 years, and they know what they're talking about. And now they're in their late 60s, and I'm 50, and I'm them, and here I am trying to, give advice on everything that I've soaked up over the years. But those I've made more connections through that group of people. And gotten answers to questions that either they didn't know the answer to and referred me to somebody, or were able to answer me directly, probably than any other resource that I've had while having a business. And so that going out there and finding a mentor or joining one of those groups, obviously for you, it was instrumental. I don't think that point gets made strongly enough, often enough. Go find people like that, because generally people are happy to help.
Totally. I mean, I have a coach now, a business coach. I mean, everybody needs somebody to help. I totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah. After all the years that I've been in business, I still have people that I bounce things off of.
Because you can't, as I say, you can't talk to your friends or family or your spouse. I mean, you can, but then they'll listen because they care, but they're not going to be able to give you the type of insight or help that you need from a business standpoint.
Right. So what is your number one reason that you've come across then? Let's put on our green hats here, and we're talking to business owners, and they're here's my issue as I ask you this question. Here's what I've seen. Why are businesses not profitable? And many times the problem that I see is that businesses make a little bit of money and don't realize how much money they've left on the table. So for me, at my size, I always say it's much easier for me to find savings and make money from existing sales than to go get new sales.
Yeah.
And so if people, you kind of fool yourself because you go, oh my God, I made $5,000 last month. And then I can look at it and go, yeah, but you should have made 8 with the same revenue, not doing any more work because you didn't do these things. So that's kind of my approach to it. But let me ask you, why are businesses not profitable?
Yeah, I mean, that is a great question. I mean, that's a very important question because according to the Small Business Administration, literally 50% of all businesses will never see their 5th birthday. They go out of business. And so the big question is why? I mean, the easy answer is that they run out of cash.
Right.
Well, so why do they run out of cash? And it's just they're not profitable for a variety of reasons. There may not have been a market fit, or the management team wasn't the right people in place and have enough investors, whatever. But it all boils down to the fact that the business owner was not looking at the right numbers and improving the right numbers. You've got to look you've got to look at the most important numbers in the business that impact profit and cash flow, and then figure out of all those numbers. And I literally have my clients look at 9 numbers. That's it, on a monthly basis. And we create what we call a scoreboard. It's just a simple graphic based scoreboard that those 9 numbers are either red, green, or yellow. And the business owner could quickly tell of these 9 numbers which ones are causing me to not hit my profit target or profit goal the most. So you've got to focus on just the few numbers to figure out what driver of profit is off.
Right.
And then once you know that, then you can go deep in that area. So here's an example. I started working with a client in Florida that's a service-based business. They were making in sales about 1.2 million in annual revenue, which is great. The owners were spending most of their time on getting more sales. And so they were working 70-hour weeks, but they had a loss when they came to me, about $250,000 loss. So they were making 1.2 million in sales, had a loss of $250,000. We started working together. I, looked at their financials, and realized that sales wasn't the problem. They were not, some of their services, they weren't making enough margin. And so when I plotted their numbers on this scoreboard of those 9 things, it was very apparent that their margins were very thin on these 3 products they were selling. And so we got to work focusing on that. And this year, I mean, they're still a client. This year, they're going to do about $350,000 profit. 2 years ago, they had a loss of $250,000. Now they have a swing over about $600,000 without growing sales.
I was going to say on the same revenue.
Yeah, on the
same.
So
to my point, they're making $600,000. Just making sure that their numbers are right.
That's right.
Yeah, I have go ahead.
No. I was saying they didn't understand their numbers. And that's sort of my overall theme, is that you've got to understand your numbers. And here's the problem with accountants and bookkeepers, is that they give the business owner a P&L or income statement, same report. They give that to them every month and expect the client to understand what to do to make that report better next month. Nobody understands it unless they're an accountant or bookkeeper. And even half the accountants and bookkeepers I've talked to don't understand it. Yeah, and so you've got to have a report. You have to look at numbers that are actionable, so you know what to do to improve profit next month.
And there's the thing with trying to figure it out, and again, this is just me speaking from experience, is you're staring at your profit and loss statement and your balance sheet, but really from an operational perspective, you're staring at your profit and loss statement. That tells you how much revenue you had and tells you how much money you made, and in between there might be 30 lines. And so you're concentrating on 2 lines that look out of bounds, or, that look too big to you, just looking at it. And all, you go in, you try to find out what those 2 are, and then 2 becomes 12, and then you forget what the first 2 are, and then the phone rings, and then you go out on sales, and then it's the weekend, and pretty sure it's been a month, and then it's been 3 months, and you go back to that note that you got in your email to check on these 2 things, and you're like, well, hell, where was I? That's literally been my experience. Without having somebody, I love your 9 points, something to just break it down, color code it, like I said, throw a crayon at it so that I can understand it. I think that's fantastic. And that is, I mean, as soon as you said that, I said, boy, that's if you can break down a P&L into 9, what'd you say? You put it in some sort of a form.
Yeah, I call it a scoreboard.
A scoreboard. Excel spreadsheet or something, I'm assuming. But you put it in the scoreboard, and then I can see on the color what that does for anyone, again, from a business perspective listening, is that allows me then to go to that specific item and try to figure out of 30 or 40, or my financials have, God, I don't know how many lines there are on those, hundreds, but on my financials, and tell me, go work on that problem, Jerry. Right here is where you can see that problem. And that problem will take months or a year to fix. It may not be a quick fix, but sometimes it's as simple as that piece of business needs to go, because unless we can get more money for it, it's unprofitable.
Right. I mean, you've got to work on any business owner there's a million things the business owner could work on. Well, nothing's going to happen if you have 100 things on your plate. So you've got to have a few things on your plate to work on. And if you only can do a few things, it needs to be the most important things.
Yeah.
How do you know what the most important things to work on? The answer is to know your numbers and understand the numbers. And that's the missing link, is most business owners don't understand their numbers. Therefore, they're not working on the right things. My client was working on sales and thought that was their problem. It wasn't their problem. And they didn't understand that because they didn't understand their numbers. And so you've got to have somebody understand the numbers yourself.
Yeah, I think it's really counterintuitive. to know when you go into business to know what the most important thing is that it's your numbers. I think that that people and what you're telling me makes sense, because that's been my experience. Is people will tell me, "Hey, well, I have a business doing 800,000." I was like, "Okay, how much money does it make?" Really, that's
Totally.
the question. But that top line revenue growth, I suffered from it. Most everybody I know suffers from it, unless you're educated in business. And I don't know. I'm going to take that back, because I know people who went to business school who came out who suck at running a business. So,
Yeah.
you have to almost experience it, get punched in the face by it, understand the ramifications of it, survive that to really give it the due that it needs. And that it is the most important thing in your business, because that sales seems like that's just the natural order of things, right? I sell a bunch of something, I pay the vendor for it, and I get whatever money's left over. But it's just not that simple.
No, I agree. But I think the reason why it's the focus of most businesses is because that's what the business owner's good at. They're good at the craft of their business.
That's a good point.
They're good at operations, and they love to talk about it, and that's their passion. And so they're great at sales. So a plumber starts a plumbing business because they know plumbing, and they're probably the company's best salesperson as well.
Yeah.
But they know plumbing. They don't necessarily know finance or accounting or numbers.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Now, my next question for you is the most important number to pay attention to. And before you answer that question, I have yet another story, but some perspective on this. I have a friend of mine. He's about 15 years older than me, and he opened a tech company in the 70s in San Francisco. And so this was, the 70s. So Intel was just starting to take over, and we were just starting to move to microprocessors. And so he built a company that built microprocessors. Now, the interesting thing about this company is it had huge sales. It grew tremendously in 4 years. And then the Taiwanese market came in, and product quality became good enough, and the turn time became fast enough, and they were doing it. They were delivering product to the customers, to his customers, for less than he could make it for.
Wow.
Yeah. And so his business disappeared. It had huge growth. It was an amazing company, and it disappeared literally overnight. But to my question about the most important number to pay attention to, right in the middle of this, all of a sudden they ran tight of cash. And they couldn't figure out why they ran tight of cash. They had him and a partner, and they got together, and as he will describe it to you, over the weekend, they must have worked 20 hours a day, sitting at his kitchen table, poring over their financials to try to figure out why they had no cash. And and it was just an aha moment. It's fairly simple, you talking about it now, but to a business owner sitting there running your business, doing this, and all of a sudden you run short of cash, it's not so simple unless somebody like you was looking at it. And what they had done is they had brought in a new salesperson about 6 months before, and they had trained him on how to price things. Now, most people might price things if it's going to cost you $10. We put our overhead on top of it, say 30%, and then you take that number, and most people would think that you times it by 1.2 to make a 20% profit. Well, you don't. You divide it by 0.7 or 0.8, whatever your profit is. He was pricing things and he was timesing it by 0.7. So the result was, if it was $10 for them and then they needed to add all their overhead plus profit on top of that, he was reducing the cost by 30%,
charging
at 0.7 and selling something for $7.
Oh, man.
So it was as simple as making sure that the salespeople were doing their math correctly. The sales were there. And as it turned out, most customers we thought we were getting too good a deal. And they were able to make it back up. But, and I have 20 stories just like that on that one number that fixed their business. So let me go back to my question. For you, the most important number to pay attention to?
I mean, the number one most important number to pay attention to is cash flow. Cash flow is defined as the amount of money flowing into your bank account minus all the money flowing out, whatever's left over. And that's cash flow. That's essentially the cash that your business created. You want to increase that. Well, there's three ways to do that. The first way is to take on debt. So you can get cash by taking out a loan from the bank or credit cards or whatnot. The second way is to get investors. So you can get other people to give you money, which is what Uber has done. The third way, the best way to get cash is to make a profit from your business. And so, of course, that's the way that we focus on with our clients is to make a profit. And of course, you want to keep as much of that profit in the form of cash as that you can. But cash flow is the most important number. And most people think, oh, well, I can look at my bank account balance every day, and that's my cash flow. And that's misleading. That just simply tells you how much is in cash that day. Your cash flow, the amount of cash flowing in minus the cash flowing out, that amount is the amount that your business created, the cash that your business created. And I tell people that I tell my clients that your business is like a machine sitting in your garage, and that machine's job is to manufacture cash.
Right.
And of course, we want to keep each part of the machine as fine-tuned as possible so that it can keep producing cash. But if you have this machine sitting in your garage that you have to pay money to maintain by taking out loans and having a loss, I mean, what's the point of owning the machine?
Right.
You want to own a machine that's going to produce cash for you. And it has to be optimized to create cash, which is cash flow. And the best way to do that is by making a profit.
So to our, when we do podcasts like this one specifically, we try to, and we kind of get out in the weeds, we get commentary back about how much people enjoy that. We're using terms that you hear all of the time that to the layman, and I was one of those, didn't understand what they mean. So in that context, and we alluded to this cash flow a little bit earlier, if I say, Adam, I'm making sales and I'm making money, but I don't have any cash.
Yeah.
Right. Which is that now comes in cash flow. Give us the reason why that would happen.
Yeah. And that's common. That's a common scenario.
Right.
Most people that come to me say, I'm making a lot of money. I'm actually working with a general contractor now who's doing about $3 million in sales. He says, my sales are going great. He says, but I'm only making about $40,000 in salary. I'm like, well, that stinks. So why? So your question is, why is that? Well, I mean, of course, there's many different reasons why it could be. The most popular reasons are, is it you're making cash, you're making sales,
right,
but you're not converting it into cash in the bank. And there's a couple of main reasons why. One main reason is that you're and let's use an example for this. Let's say that you own a plumbing business. We talked about that, and you had a job that you're charging your client $10,000. Okay, and so you've made a sale for $10,000. So in your books, on your income statement, $10,000 sale. That's great. To do the sale, to do the job, you have to pay your employees. You have to buy materials and supplies to do all that. And let's say that cost $6,000. So you've paid $6,000 to do the job in form of employees, payroll, and supplies and whatnot. And so 10,000 out of 6,000, great. You have a $4,000 profit. Well, how much do you have in the bank account? How much cash flow did you create if the client never paid you? Nothing. You've made $10,000 in sales, $4,000 in profit. If the client hadn't paid you, you've made zero cash flow. In fact, you have a negative cash flow of $6,000 because you had to pay out your suppliers and vendors and payroll. So accounts receivable for service-based businesses is a huge influencer of cash flow. Yeah. Make sure you collect what you spend or what you make. For retailers, inventory is a huge cash driver. Your inventory sitting on your shelf or in your warehouse should be thought of as just piles of cash sitting there. Right. And you want to get your inventory, every single product that you stock, you want to get what's called days in inventory, the number of days that the average item is on your shelf. You want to get that number as low as possible, because if you're tying, if you're opening a retail store, an e-commerce store, and you're buying all this inventory, until you start selling it, you're going to have a negative cash flow. And so, you make sure you're buying the right product to sell, but make sure you turn it over as much as possible so you can start generating cash flow. So that's why a lot of businesses who are experiencing growth actually experience cash pain, because they're growing and spending more money on more advertising, more inventory, more payroll, more whatever. And they're spending actually cash, and their cash income, their cash inflow is not catching up with them. And it's a delicate balancing act, but you've got to monitor those key numbers.
And sometimes those key numbers, the answers to them it can be simple. As an example, if you're managing your inventory turn, and what Adam is saying there is you buy it, it sits on your shelf. How fast does that shirt sell? Does it sell in a day? Does it sell in a week? Does it sell in a month? And then you have to finance that shirt sitting on that shelf waiting to go. The flip side to that would be in a service-based business, you'd have receivables. That is, as he described in his $10,000 and $6,000 program, you still haven't received the $10,000 yet. And sometimes, back to the inventory side, I have a couple of people that I have helped over the years that are in those type of businesses, and one of them in particular, I'm glad you said that, because it was simple as him calling his vendor and getting better terms.
Yeah.
So he said, I don't want an investor. I don't want to give up equity. I don't want a partner. I don't want to have to do any of that. The bank won't give me any money because I've only been in business for 2 years, but I'm selling all of these things at a profit, but there's no cash. And so he thought, what am I going to do? There's not enough money. I said, well, did you call the vendor? What do you mean call the vendor? The vendor gives me 15-day terms. I said, well, ask him for 30-day terms or 45-day terms. And if you can get it, maybe add a point or two to the cost. But the vendor financed you out of it contractually. Everybody agrees to. That's how the world turns. And so in that specific example, that was one way to very quickly fix your cash flow problem without having to bring in outside money. Is sometimes it's the easiest things. Just make a phone call. And even that, we're uncomfortable, I think, or we're reluctant to make those kind of phone calls.
Right. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And then your suppliers, they need you more than you need them in many cases, because they have competition too. Right. You could just go to their competition. So they want to work with you. They want to keep you as a client.
Right. Right. And the key to that, just to anybody listening, when you do something like that, make sure you pay. If you tell them 30 days and that's what you negotiate in a deal like that, by God, you better pay them at 30 days.
Yeah, you got to honor your thing as well. But
you lose all credibility if you don't do that. Yeah. Okay, so and I agree wholeheartedly with that, and I appreciate you. That was a great examples of cash flow. Again, some of these terms get thrown around, and people may not understand them, and we always try to bring some light without going too far out into the weeds, as I said, into what some of these terms mean and what businesses have to deal with. So in that vein, somebody has a business and it's failing. The two questions. The number one reason why businesses fail, I don't know if you have a specific reason why that is. And then second to that question is, what can they do about it?
Oh, those are great questions. I believe the number one reason businesses fail is because they run out of cash. Now, there's a variety of reasons why the business could fail, but cash pretty much solves anything. If the marketing and sales is not coming in, well, cash could help fix that. If you didn't have the right management team in place, well, cash could help fix that. If there's not a market fit and you need to develop a different product or service, cash can help fit that. So having cash almost solves almost everything with the business. So cash flow, I believe, is the number one reason. Having access to cash is the number one reason businesses fail, and that's a big. Everybody wants to look at the Ubers and the WeWorks and all this of the world and want to emulate them. The thing is, they're getting cash not from profit, but from investors. And they're able to do all these cool things because they have cash coming in the door from all these investors. that's not a reality for most small businesses. I mean, 90%, 99, I would venture to say, small businesses in the country are just not able to get cash from investors, nor debt that's not personal debt, taking on
Right.
personal credit cards or personal lines of credits, or taking a line of mortgaging your house.
I think
And
that too is from a social media perspective, from a business media perspective. I talk about unicorns all the time, and that's those big billion-dollar businesses that 28-year-old kids started an app. So then all of these other 28-year-old kids emulate them and say, I'm going to start an app, not understanding that the one app that gets all the publicity, there's 5,000 apps behind it in one day that go out of business every day, or aren't financially successful. The same's true with businesses too. Even if you're not a business person or you're following businesses specifically, popular culture kind of has it, the terms that kind of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, right? And along with that are these common terms like top line growth. Oh, we're really, particularly in the internet era, we're really concentrating on top line growth. And the more of that top line growth we can have, the more successful we're going to be ultimately. And so I think that that's crept into the consciousness over the last 15 or 20 years. And people, I know it affected me. And people look at that and go, well, it's all about top line growth, and then I can make money. And I think what people have to understand is perspective. You said it, 99%. I don't know a single one. So in my 40 different business owners that I know, I don't know a single one that has ever had had that experience like what Uber does, which loses billions of dollars every year. It's burning through cash, $2-3 billion a quarter. It has to constantly go out and give up more equity in its business in order to raise new funding. The investors are counting on the business making money in the future at some point, but it's not making money. Therefore, it's not really a business, right? That's kind of what my whole story there was, to get to that. It's not really a business. I mean, WeWork certainly isn't a business, and that whole thing is blown up spectacularly. Yeah. But Uber's not really a business. It's not a business if it's not operating and it's carrying itself and it's making money. So if that were John Q. Public on Main Street running a business, and he reads about how Uber does it, the point I want to make here off of your point is that that's not real business. A real business is one that pays its own bills, has cash flow, so it gets financing for that cash flow, but makes money. Because if you're not making money, 99.999% of us are gone.
Totally. Which is why half of all businesses never see their 5th birthday.
Yeah, that's an amazing. I think it's even worse in the service side of things, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Probably.
So what do they do about it?
Yeah, the easy answer, it's definitely hard to execute, but the easy answer is to generate positive cash flow, to have your business, re-engineer your business or your machine sitting in your garage to make cash, but to make more of it every single month and every single year. And how do you do that? Well, I believe that the key is breaking your business part down, or your machine, or your business down into those 9 parts, those 9 numbers that I talked about, and we can go in the 9 numbers in a second. But in every single month, looking at how each of those 9 numbers are performing, and deciding of the 9 numbers, which one is causing you to not hit your profit goal the most, and then go to work focusing on that one thing.
Right.
Even if there's 12 things that you need to be focused on, you focus on one thing to make sure it gets done, and then focus on the second most important thing, then the third most important thing.
Right.
But it's all of this sounds easy, but it's hard without somebody that can interpret those numbers for you and show you, of all the things you're looking at, here's the number one most important thing to focus on.
Yeah,
that's where a CFO type person comes in.
And once you have that pointed to you as a business owner, once the CFO points that out to you, I think there's perspective here. You talked about your guys in Florida that had 1.2 million and were just blowing up sales and they had no problem. Everybody can sell. Selling is easy. Selling profitably is hard.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I always say. So you could learn to sell. Anybody can sell something for nothing. That's easy to do. Selling it profitably is really hard. And so if you think about, I don't know what the average profit margin is for a business, but let's use 10% just for easy math. Anybody listening out there, if you're, I always look at it like this. If a CFO can point something to me and say, hey, Jerry, you can turn that number upside down by $10,000. That's $10,000 in my pocket. That's a $100,000 account that I would have to go get, number one. So I'd have to go through the process of getting that. And then I'd have to maintain that account, hire new people, incorporate it into my existing business, whatever it is, and then manage it for an entire year to make the same money that I can make by someone like you pointing out to me, hey, fix this and you have $5,000. And then you don't have to go get a $50,000 account.
Totally.
And I don't know. Seems a lot easier to fix this, but it's not as, it's not as glamorous.
Right.
It's just not as pretty to go, no, I need to be out there meeting people and talking about how great my business is and what I can do for them. And I'm going, no, you've done that. Concentrate on this and make sure you're extracting every penny that you can. And if you can't, then you need to reprice your product. But I think it's in our mind for some reason. It's a mindset that I don't understand what this says, so I don't want to look at it.
Yeah,
it's easy. It's easy sales. That's it's much easier to find savings than it is to get new sales in, and it's much more profitable, obviously.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And it's cheaper to get money from an existing customer or client than it is to get a new one.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost silly to anybody listening that we're saying that, but my experience has been exactly the opposite. So even though that's true, it's been the opposite. We all want to run out and sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
So where does that is that just your niche, is the small businesses, or was it you kind of just that's what you can understand and get your hands around, or is there some specific love of small business that you have?
So I have a heart for small business owners because I was, I felt as an accountant that I had this entrepreneurial spirit and I believe a lot of people have that and they dive into it, but then they constantly struggle. And it's painful. I mean, I went through a really tough period around 2009, 2010 because of all these issues. And I don't want other people to experience this issue. I have another client who owns a house cleaning, like a maid service type business. And she her passion is to give people clean houses and clean restaurants and whatever. And that's what she enjoys. But, before we started working together, she just struggled just with not knowing what to do. And it impacted her home life. It impacted her marriage. It impacted her finances. And she was just struggling. And all she wanted to do was have a house cleaning business. Right. And I have a heart for small business owners because small business is the backbone of America. I mean, most people are employed by a small business in the United States. And it's a shame when your employees are making more money than the owner does. Right. My client, the general contractor doing $3 million, his employees are making way more money than he is. And that's sad. And I get it because I was there. I mean, I was making a lot of money sales wise and not making enough profit. And my employee was making more. My manager, one of my managers, was making more money than I was. And I own the store. And I just don't want to see that happen. And that's my passion, is to help small business owners. Yeah. And that, along those lines, some of the best advice I got was from a friend of mine that has worked for me now for 20 years. And we had worked together when we were 16 years old at McDonald's. And I had started to make some money
and was starting to do some things with it. And I was kind of uncomfortable about it. Again, I'm a poor kid from the streets, right? And so I was trying to be humble, and I went and asked him his opinion. I think I was buying a fancy car or something, and he said, "I want," and he gave me something that was so profound along those lines. He said, "I want you as successful as you can be, because the more successful you are, the more guaranteed I am to feed my family." And I thought, that's not an often heard, certainly not in social media and the media in general. That's not the story that business owners are, or how business owners are portrayed. But I thought, that's smart. If you're working for somebody, which most business owners or small business owners, people do work for them, like you said, you want them making as much money as they possibly can, because that's only security for the business and then ultimately for you. Yeah,
absolutely.
I had just another practical example of that. I had a lady owned a catering company, and she came to me she got referred to me, asking me for some advice. And I said, tell me about the business. And so she's working every weekend, works all week to get ready for the weekend, and has weddings and all of these different events. And it's just hours and hours of time. And she's calling in family, and it's more than she can do. And it's a full-time gig for her, but she wasn't making any money. And so, and this is my point, is sometimes the answers are so simple, guys, in business out there. It's right in front of you, but it's hard to see when you're buried. So I said to her, "Do you get every job that you bid?" And she said, "Yeah, anybody that comes to me, I give them a bid, I get every job." I said, no. There's your problem. Yeah. Double your price and get half as many. Yeah. Right. And then you'll be back to making money. Well, she called me back about 10 months later, and she said, kind of self-serving for me to say this, but she's like, "That's the best piece of advice I ever got. I work a third less, and I make money, and I wasn't making any money before, simply because I raised my price, and some people turned me down, and I don't look at getting turned down." And I had counseled her on the emotional impact of, getting turned down from a sale. If you're not making money on that sale, it's okay to get turned down. In fact, if you're getting every sale, you're probably not making money, or you're probably not priced correctly.
You could be the best salesperson in the world selling Ferraris for $1,000 each. You'd be a great salesperson.
Yes, that's exactly right. Money. Yeah. But businesses are built around, again, we've said this now 2 or 3 times, built around that top line growth. And sometimes the answers are less money, less income. Let sales go in order to make money.
Yeah. Right size your business. Yeah.
Right size your business. Yeah. So one more question. You went out and did it. Boy, you picked a hell of a time to start a business, 2006, right? Right before the whole thing took a dump.
Yeah. And I bought a house the next year, and that was fun too.
Oh, man. So right before it all crashed?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Yes. So that was a good start for you, though, because you are old enough to experience that. There's so many people out there now that are under 30 that have only lived in this market, as adults, the one that we're in. So a little bit of adversity is never a bad thing. But somebody wants to be, let's see, you were probably 27 or 28, if I'm doing my math correctly, when you went and started your business?
I was 26. 26.
Mm-hmm. So that's perfect age. So you're 26, you want to go out and start your own deal just like you did. My last question for you is, anybody that's listening that's that age, really any age, but let's just use kind of, in their 20s, and it seems so insurmountable and overwhelming. You went through that. What's your advice to somebody who's thinking about it, but just, doesn't think they have what it takes or can make it happen for them?
That's a good question. My best piece of advice is I would say 2 things. Get started, because a lot of action solves a lot of problems. Action help, just taking the step, putting one foot in front of the other, just moving forward just a little bit solves a lot of problems. And the reason why I say this is so many people love listening to podcasts and reading books and watching motivational videos and all that, and going to conferences, but they never do anything.
Yeah, right.
They're just wishing. They're just entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Even if you make a mistake, you're going to learn from that. So I'd say get started, take an action. The second thing is to to start with whatever product or service you want to sell and just find people to pay you money for that product or service. Instead of what happens a lot of times is where people will have an idea for something and they'll spend months or years and tons of money developing this product or service, and then finally getting ready to sell and nobody buys it.
Mm-hmm.
Just get a minimum viable product out there and see if somebody will pay you money, not a friend, family member, or whatever,
Right.
a stranger to pay you money for this. Then you know you've got something, and then you could take that money and reinvest it and make your product a little bit better, and then keep doing that until it's a lot better. I would say those two things. Yeah.
And so the inaction is obviously, I mean, it's straightforward to say the inaction is stops you from doing it. But I always say, and you said it already, just do something. And if you wait to have every duck in a row and everything lined up, this is where I diverge with some of the business experts. If you wait to have 6 months of bills in the bank, and you wait for this, and you save up that, and you nest egg all of this, well, hell, you'll be 50 before you turned around. And I don't know anybody who started a business that way. Nobody. I don't know a single one. We all got credit cards. Right? We all borrowed.
Totally.
You did it. Everyone does it. That's how you do it. So I'm glad you said that, because that's you just got to start. And then what you find happens when you start is that you find a way out of things that you never imagined you'd find your way in.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I would, I'm not saying go out and take on debt recklessly or anything. I would take action, but take slow, calculated action.
Yeah, stay working at the current job you have and do it at night. And like you said, I like that advice. Just kind of get something out there and see what kind of response you get working weekends and nights while you keep your full-time gig and keep the bills getting paid.
And one last thing, a piece of advice, and this sort of irks me, is that people will come to me that have not started a business, and they'll expect, and they are looking for advice or this magic bullet that will make their business get off the ground or whatnot. And I don't think anybody's going to be able to give you that. You've got to get the business off the ground yourself and stop looking to other people for this magic bullet. You've got to do it, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Yeah,
I would go on Reddit into the business, into the business ones, and I finally can't do it anymore, because every other question is some young kid asking, "How can I make $1 million in the next 5 years?" And it's like, well, first you get a job. Right.
That was so funny. I actually just unsubscribed from that subreddit, the small business subreddit, for the exact same reason last week.
Well, yeah, see, I'm not smart enough to unsubscribe from it, but I need to, because I don't go back to it anymore, because so you know what I'm talking about. It's a drop shipping company, or the
Amazon arbitrage.
Amazon arbitrage. Yeah, and it's so easy. Anybody can do it, and yet 27 billion people try every day and don't make a living at it. And it's that get rich quick kind of, let me ask advice from a business owner how to bypass the 20 years it took him to build his business to get him where he is. I want to go directly to that, and I don't want to do
a course. If there's a course on something, you get that raises some red flags.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. That's exactly right. Adam, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
Oh, yeah. Well, the best way is my website, thecfoproject.com, thecfoproject.com. If you go to thecfoproject.com/rightfit, RIGHTFIT, there's my calendar. I would love to schedule a 20-minute call with anybody listening, just to talk about their business.
No cost. You just a free call to see what you might be able to do for them.
Yeah. I mean, I love talking to businesses, and I'm the type of person that will only work with businesses that we know we can help and that I like.
Right. And
that's the best way, just to get on a phone call, see if we might be a good fit, which is why I call it the right fit call. Are we the right fit for you?
Right. Yeah. And that's, I'm glad we had this conversation, and I'm going to keep your name in my head too, because I know lots of businesses in the world today. You don't have to be sitting across from the person in order to help them out. Today we can do it through the myriad of technologies. And so,
absolutely.
I've been giving this advice out for years. I've never really known anybody that does it other than who I use, but I don't want to give them up, obviously.
Yeah.
So hopefully I can throw a customer your way myself here. That'd be a neat experiment for me to see how that goes. I appreciate it, man. That was a fun hour. I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming on.
Quick. Thank you so much for having me.
I know they always go quick. These hours are, sometimes I go into them and I say, oh, okay, I got questions and but how am I going to get through an hour? And then you look up and an hour's gone by.
Yeah.
Go check him out. Adam@thecfoproject.com is his email, and the CFO project.com is his website. You can go on there and get a 20-minute free consultation. Just go to his calendar and get on get on there and have a conversation with him. Adam, again, I appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Take care, pal. That was fun. That wraps it up, guys. This episode, once again, man, those hours go quick. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Be sure to check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, Google, Reddit, Jerry Brazy on all of them. Go to questions at Jerry Brazy if you have a question, but hook up. Billy, where do they go if they want to get on the podcast? Because as if you've listened at all or this is your first one, we love conversations. And it doesn't have to be about business. Somehow I'll weave business into the story, but we like stories. And if you think your story's boring, reach out to us because it's all about conversations. And so even if it's not business related, I'm happy to have anybody on or bring you in if you're in the Portland area or bring you on via video or audio and have a conversation. So where do they reach out to? They go to Jerry Brazy?
Yeah, I mean, there's
questions at jerrybrazy.com.
There are links for that all throughout the website. The easiest way would probably just go to thejerrybrazy.com and go to contact us. And right there on the contact page, it says if you'd like to be on the podcast, click here and get in touch.
Easy.
Boom.
Easy. So I dare you. Reach out if you're uncomfortable. I can't do a podcast. I don't. I'm too uncomfortable. Yes, it's uncomfortable. I agree. And anybody just go back and listen to podcast number 1, as we always joke about, to hear what an uncomfortable podcast sounds like between Billy and I, because that will tell you. And then contrast that with how you sound now and really listen to the first half of that podcast and the second half. And even then you can hear it get better. So even if you're nervous about it, we're just having a conversation. It just happens to be in front of a computer and there's not too many uhs or yas or stammering. There's never too many. That's just the way that we talk. Everybody does it. I get tongue-tied the same as everybody else does. And I don't care because I don't care what people think. I just like to have conversations. So if that's something that you guys want to do, I dare you to reach out to us on any subject. Let's sit down. Even if you disagree with me. Yesterday, whenever that podcast comes out, he and I didn't see eye to eye on 2 or 3 subjects. So even if you disagree with me, come on, let's talk about it. So questions at jerrybrazy.com. Remember, people, did I say Spotify? Daniel, crucify me. Spotify, if I didn't say Spotify, we are on Spotify. That's how I listen to these podcasts. Remember, people, that opportunities are everywhere. You got to go get them. Thanks, Adam. Peace.
Peace out.